Now for global business updates, Rotus Odiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Bati. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai.
Good morning,
Rufai. Welcome back. Good to see you. Beginning with what to watch this week, got a lot of data and earnings that are going to be dominating this particular week. It's President's Day in the United States, so the U.S. markets are closed. Tuesday, we're going to get earnings from Barclays. Basically seeing how higher interest rates have supported their net interest income, also their wealth division, investment banking, and so on and so forth. On Wednesday, we get the January minutes from the FOMC meeting, the Federal Open Market Committee, led by, of course, Jerome Powell. So we'll see more commentary on, some of the logic that pushed their voting to keep interest rates where they were at the last time, and maybe some possible more forward guidance. Although Powell has told us, and it's been supported by the latest inflation numbers we've seen, that they're probably going to stay, quote unquote, higher for longer. Nvidia, the talk of the tech world. We looked at how they've surpassed Amazon and surpassed Alphabet last week in terms of their market cap and how they're aiming for Saudi Aramco now. This was ahead of their earnings. This was last week, and the earnings weren't even out. So their earnings are coming out on Wednesday. If Nvidia beats forecasts, which are already high for Wall Street, then will they surpass Saudi Aramco by Wednesday? I mean, we'll have to see what happens. Nvidia is up 49% year to date, and it's only February the 19th. Thursday, we get Purchasing Managers Index numbers for the UK and the Euro area. Again, remember, Euro area is different from the EU. Euro area is the countries that use the euro currency as opposed to the wider EU area, sans your Swedens and your Denmarks and your Switzerlands. Then you've got the ECB January minutes from their meeting. That also is going to provide some forward guidance as to where we see things with possible rate cuts. Christine Lagarde has been absolutely adamant that it's not going to happen unless the data is supported. And we can see euro area inflation has kind of trended downwards, I think about 2.4% year on year. Their target is 2. Then on Friday, we get Joachim Nagel, who is part of the ECB's board. Also, Isabel Schnabel, both economists will be speaking. Again, that will possibly support more of what Lagarde, and the minutes rather, would be saying on Thursday. We go to Asian markets. China, of course, has been away for the whole of last week. As a result of the lunar holiday, the Year of the Dragon. Hong Kong markets came back into play last week. So did Taiwan and other markets. But China is fully back. Although the market had a soft opening because we're going to get to FDI data in a moment. Basically, markets were soft as far as Asia is concerned. Although the Nikkei is still doing quite well. Now, foreign direct investments for China falling to a 30-year low. But look at that. 2023 FDI coming into China. This is from China's State Administration of Foreign Exchange. Was $33 billion. It was an 82% drop. And if you do the math, that's about $183 billion in the prior year. It's the lowest level since 1993. Q4, if you want to drill down further, $17.5 billion, a 33% drop year on year. But, I would probably, Nigeria probably give her left or right arm to get some of those numbers. If you look at the chart, look at China's foreign direct investments. You can just see this is dating from 2007 all the way to 2023. You can see that massive drop from 2021 when it hit a high of 344 billion, coming all the way down. Again, China has a plethora of issues, a deflationary territory, an exodus of foreign portfolio investors. You've got the property market issues. It's just one after the other. And then, of course, the geopolitical concerns. The U.S. has been applying pressure. If Trump comes back into office, China is in some serious trouble because some of the things he's been threatening is going to be even worse than the trade war we saw when he was back in office. Even Biden hasn't let up either. So China is seriously under pressure. You've also got the restriction of chips where they are, seems like they're falling behind in terms of trying to catch up with the U.S. on the chip side. NVIDIA's numbers are also going to, illuminate that. Also looking at Huawei in the future. From there, we go to, I think, the South Africa now. There have been, there are two big e-commerce firms from China, Temu and Shein. South African retailers are complaining that both companies are using import tax loopholes to dodge having to pay more tax. So again, more pressure on Chinese e-commerce companies. You have the European Union, we've already discussed this extensively, complaining about China using subsidies to flood European markets with electric vehicles. There's a lot of talk on that end. Now you've got South African retailers complaining that there should be more stringent focus on Chinese e-commerce firms. Shein and Temu, they have been expanding. I think Temu actually had a Super Bowl ad. They paid about $7+ million to advertise at the Super Bowl. So trying to get more market share. So they're expanding everywhere. But again, you're starting to see this pushback from different regions from the EU to Africa as well. By the way, South Africa and China are both in BRICS, right? So anyway, to Dubai, more impressive numbers coming from the UAE. Their non-oil trade hitting almost $1 billion. Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum tweeted it over the weekend. UAE has been trying to diversify away from oil, although everything you're seeing on your screen was built by oil. Even I understand their airport saw a 33% jump in traffic last year. So more travelers going into the UAE. What's his name? Bill Schiffer. So he's the CEO of the Dubai airport. He talked about using technology to make travel less uncomfortable for travelers, and he says travelers want to spend as little time in airports as possible. So lots of, as far as the diversification news coming out from UAE, the numbers show what's going on. We come to Nigeria. Capital importation figures for 2023 dropping by 23%, or 26%, year on year to 3.9 billion dollars. Portfolio investors, just your foreign portfolio investors that go into Nigerian securities, from treasury bills to stocks and so on and so forth. 1.1 billion, 53% drop. Your FDI, which is where we're really focused on, look at it, it's just $377 million, a drop of 19%. If you look at FDI, what we really want to get into the country, and I've shared this chart with you before, you can see from a high of about 4.6 billion in 2008, you see the massive drop to $468 million in 2022 for FDI, which brings us to Atiku Abubakar, and of course, him making headlines with his addressing the foreign exchange issues. So here's just to pick out a couple of things. He said, after a careful assessment of the state of our economy at the twilight of the Buhari administration, I knew full well that the economy of the country was heading for the ditch. And he says he came up with a number of policy prescriptions that would rescue the country from getting into the mess we're currently in. Those ideas are encapsulated in his policy document. It says, look at point one. I had signed on to a commitment to reform the operation of the foreign exchange market. Specifically, there was a commitment to eliminate the multiple exchange rate windows. The system only served to enrich rent seekers, middlemen, arbiters, and fraudsters. That's been done already. The multiple exchange rate windows have been collapsed. Now, but this important point here, a fixed exchange rate, which is what we had prior, would be out of the question. First, it would not be in line with our philosophy of running an open, private sector-friendly economy. Second, operating a successful fixed exchange rate would require sufficient foreign exchange reserves to defend the domestic currency. But as is well known, Nigeria's major challenge is the persistent FX illiquidity occasioned by limited foreign exchange inflows. You've seen the capital numbers we just pointed to and FDI numbers. Without sufficient FX reserves, confidence in the Nigerian economy will remain low and the Naira will remain under pressure. The economy will have no firepower to support its currency. Besides, a fixed exchange rate system is akin to running a subsidy regime. That's Atiku saying it. So this is where things get a little awry. In his third point, he says, on the other hand, given Nigeria's underlying economic conditions, adopting a floating exchange rate system would be an overkill. We would have encouraged the Central Bank of Nigeria to adopt a gradualist approach to FX management. A managed floating system would have been a preferred option. In simple terms, in such a system, the Naira may fluctuate daily, but the CBN will step in and control and stabilize its value. Such control will be exercised judiciously and responsibly, especially to curb speculative activities. That is what we are running now. Again, he's saying things that are already being done. The CBN already came out and said that we are using a managed float. And he said at the bottom there, that's where I really got thrown off. He said Nigeria has insufficient, unstable, and precarious foreign reserves to support a free floating rate regime. Really confused, because when you float, you are moving away from a fixed exchange rate. You don't use your reserves. The whole point of floating is that you are allowing market forces to completely determine what the currency is, and you do not intervene. So I'm not really sure why. I don't know, maybe that's an error, or maybe I don't know what he meant to say there, but you don't use foreign exchange reserves to support a free float. A free float means that you are letting go and market forces determining it. And then finally, I think he said that, well, essentially at the end of the day, he didn't prefer any solutions as to what it is to be done. Everything that he mentioned in his tweet is already being done, which tells you that how tough things are. And one more important point I need to make. Because Omoleye Sowore was on Newsday, our program that airs from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. WAT. He was also talking about the exchange rate. No one has talked about FX swaps. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria and the MPC meeting is coming up next week or so, where they will hopefully address this thing. FX swaps are currency liquidity management tools where you give one currency to a party, the party gives you one back. The Central Bank was giving Naira to commercial banks. The commercial banks were giving the CBN dollars. Those have not been paid back. There's a backlog. And the issue now is how much of those FX swaps are out there. Hopefully, Mr. Cardozo, who, by the way, said he has the second toughest job in the world, will tell us what those numbers are. Because if those FX swap numbers are separate from the backlog of $4 to $7 billion, then that means that we're in a deeper hole than where we are right now, which tells you why Nigeria was only able to make only a $63 million payment for an $800 million backlog that is owed to the airline. So again, this foreign exchange issue that we're facing, it is incredibly tough, it is incredibly bleak, and there's only one way that you can actually address this thing, which is what has already been done. Finally, on the matter of, if you look at today's business day, which I'm sure Mr. Fini will go through, they are talking about how one petrol subsidy nears 1 trillion monthly, surpassing pre-Tinubu levels. We addressed this. Anyone can go to our YouTube page 4 months ago.
It's back to subsidy payment. We
right.
said it.
Right. So if anyone goes to our YouTube page, we already addressed the fact that this was 4 months ago. There it is. Our diesel 900 fuel 578. That's it. That's all.
I'd love to sound it off on this.
Yeah,
I think what Atiku is saying is, and for me, my problem with the CBN is Mr. Cardozo can say all the ones that's job is hard as hell, but he should also make decisions with empirical research. I get what Atiku is saying. A managed float where you have the fundamentals also to defend. The problem is the CBN is having a managed float where they don't have the fundamentals to defend. That's where you are having a big problem today. There's no arsenal, because even with a managed float, you need an arsenal to be able to deploy to the market. But CBN does not have the arsenal. That's why it's doing everything it's doing with the bank's long position of FX, bring your FX in, put it into the market, but it's not dousing it. And that's why even with the payment of, I think it's 125, they've paid 125 million. I think they paid in 2 tranches for the airlines. I think they paid 65 first. Then
well, they said the last figure I saw was 63.
And they paid another 63. I think this was the second tranche they paid 63 for. So I think it's well over 100. But the fundamentals is the fact that you don't have even enough to be able to defend with the floating rates. A free floating rate, no. I'll take you back historically. Even in the 60s, when they still had the gold standard in the UK, all right? You had countries rally around the UK, sending them money to be able to still defend that system when they had it then. Black Wednesday is another example. The British government spent about over 10 billion pounds. The day George Soros made, what Forex traders quoted, the day George Soros made $1 billion. About 10 billion pounds to defend that day. The difference with this managed float we're having is that there are no fundamentals to defend. So it's just like tying the hands of the CBN and you expect them to fight. I think I need to go because of time.
Very shortly. So, well, we're almost out of time.
Yep.
So very quick, I was going to touch on the foreign inflows. Capital inflows, lowest in since 2007. And I wanted to center on the role of the states, because oftentimes you look at federal government, but there are some states that are close, that are zero for 5 years. Last year, we had a representative from the Bayelsa state government to talk about the plans for this year. And one of the questions I'd asked was, what are their plans for attracting foreign investment? And roundabout way, but no concrete conversations. So the question we want to ask is that some of these governors, some of the states that haven't attracted in 5 years include Bayelsa, Ebonyi, Gombe, Jigawa, Kebbi, Taraba, Yobe, Zamfara. What are they doing? Why are the people keeping quiet? And that's why they go cap in hand waiting for the federal government for FAC, and therefore they're held in ransom. So they have to do the bidding oftentimes. No plans, no ideas, nothing. Why? We need to truly talk about it because it is disgraceful. At the end of the day, if you cannot manage as a state, that's why you'd find out issues around owing of salaries.
Yep.
If the oil revenue is in
yep.
great, yeah, you owe salaries.
Yep.
We need to talk a little bit. The only state that seems to be consistently attracting is Lagos State.
Lagos took like 70-something percent.
AFC,
65%.
African Investment for AIF, the last one, only Lagos went there. It means that they don't want serious about attracting investment.
One state takes 65%.
No, Edo was with us in Abidjan.
Do you expect many of these states to attract investment? When there's the other argument about the viability of the states, many of these states, they are just centers of consumption.
Yeah.
They are not centers of productivity. And the governments in the various states are not making any concerted effort to make their states centers of productivity. The only state that got out of that loop was Abia by Q3, Q4 of 2023. All the other states have been there for 5 years. And 8 of those states have not attracted anything for 5 years. So this is the dilemma that we face. And if you look at that draft you presented to us, you see that the decline has been consistent since 2015. And what does that tell you about leadership, about vision? However, with regard to capital importation and Atiku Abubakar, I hope you are aware that Mr. Bayo Ononuga gave a response to Alhaji Atiku Abubakar.
Oh, he did?
What, the Waziri Adamawa was saying basically is that the Tinubu government should listen to wise counsel. And Mr. Ononuga responded to say Atiku was mixing things up. In fact, he was even saying that capital importation, has gone up. So that's contrary to what the MBS is saying. But he tried to show that, in fact, Atiku was not even aware of what was discussed between the presidency and the governors. He made big weather out of that. But the truth of the matter is that, both Atiku Abubakar and PDP Governors Forum, they've been complaining that Tinubu is not getting it right, the policies are not working. In fact, the PDP Governors Forum is even saying, if you can't do the job, why don't you just step aside?
Yeah.
Now, some of the issues you raised, the CBN governor responded to some of those issues at the plenary session of the Catholic Bishops' Conference. He says, yes, the MPC will find a way forward. And contrary to what Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the Waziri Adamawa is saying, and PDP Governors Forum are saying, he's saying that, in fact, the international community, the IMF, the Fitch rating agency, that they are commending Nigeria. They are saying that the reform measures are working and that they have seen it. He repeated it, that they have seen it twice. The only problem is that Nigerians have not seen it. So I don't know what IMF and Fitch, what they are seeing, that the ordinary man on the street of Nigeria is not seeing. This is the dilemma we face. As for China, yes, they came back from the lunar year. About 434 million domestic trips during the holiday alone. Over 87 billion in terms of demand, consumer demand, and the stocks rose on Monday. Tourism topping it. But the question is, will China be able to sustain it? And you are right, they are trying to do a number of things. The People's Bank of China yesterday kept key policy rates steady, but they are also looking towards the US. The Federal Reserve, will they cut rates so that they can have headroom in Asia? But they don't have to, so my point is, they don't have to wait till Trump.
Right.
A Trump presidency is bad news for everybody, whether for NATO or for China or for Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
All right, thank you, Rotus. I'm very sad to hear that Dubai recorded more travelers last year when Nigeria did not participate in it. At least let us talk about that again.
Data is not sentiment.
Nigeria
is back. They need us.